Tonight we're going to have Melissa Carnagey, the founder of Sex Positive Families, talking about sex-positive parenting, strategies for raising sexually healthy children. Please give her a warm round of applause to welcome her up to the stage.
How are y'all? Y'all doing all right? All right, y'all. So let's talk about sex education in the United States, okay? I know, I'm starting out with a doozy. So whether you knew already or not, so there are 24 states, and including the District of Columbia, that require sex education in our schools, okay? How many states are there in the United States? Okay, so that gives you perspective. In Puerto Rico, don't forget about Puerto Rico. Please don't forget about Puerto Rico. And as you can see, Texas is in the black there. So we do not require sex education in schools. And then 13 states do not require the sex ed to be medically accurate, including Texas. Where are we at right now? Texas! I know, so sorry about this. So, of the 50 states, 26 states say that it must stress abstinence, okay? Texas is a different color this time, but still not the right color. So abstinence, so that we're all on the same page, is abstaining from sex, right? Not having sexual activity. So raise your hand if you abstained from sex prior to marriage. If you're married, right? Okay, I don't see any hands, and I don't think it's the lights. So abstinence-based education focuses on the promotion of abstaining from sexual activity outside of marriage, and it must not in any way advocate contraceptive use or discuss contraceptive methods other than to emphasize their failure rates. So this is the type of sex ed that the majority of the children in our country are receiving, okay? And clearly it's working, right? So before we dive into this topic, because what I'm going to hope to do here is share with you some strategies that can save our future, because we cannot rely on our schools to teach our young people about their bodies and about consent and about healthy relationships. It's just not happening for all of our young people, right? So who am I? I'm Melissa Carnagey. I am a social worker. Yay! Woo! Yeah! So I'm a social worker licensed in the state of Texas. I've been in the field of sexual health for the last 11 years. And yeah, it doesn't crack. So I've been working in HIV and sexually transmitted infections, and I've been at the nonprofit level and at the state government level. And then a year ago, I decided to branch out on my own because I felt I was bigger than those cubicle walls, and it's possible. And I am now a full-time sex educator, and so I founded a company called Sex Positive Families. And so I talk about sex for a living. For the last year, I've also taught youth. So I do teach sex ed. I teach a curriculum, comprehensive sex ed curriculums, so they're not in the public schools. So I teach in charter schools because charter schools and private schools have, more flexibility. So aside from my professional experience, I'm also a parent. So my partner and I raised 3 children, the oldest being 19. So my daughter just finished her freshman year over at UT San Antonio. Woo-hoo! Go, yeah. So I've been raising her in a sex-positive way since she was very young, and my motivation for the work that I do rests heavily on the fact that I am raising a girl-identified child, because here in the United States, it's very challenging, especially for girl-identified children. A lot of mixed messaging, a lot of toxic messaging. So I trained her very early to understand her body and pleasure and consent. And we also have an 8-year-old son and a 4-year-old son, as far as we know, in terms of their gender identities. So sex ed truly is my jam. I live it and I love it. So before we dive in, there are a couple of things I want to make sure we're all clear about, okay? Number one, this talk is not just for parents, all right? I use the term caring adults in the work that I do because I believe that all of us as adults have influence, and we intersect with young people, or like I like to call emerging adults. We intersect with them in our lives, whether they're in our neighborhoods that we live in, whether we're youth-serving professionals, they're family members, they're the children of friends that we have. So there's the potential at any point for all of us to have a positive impact on a young person in this lifetime. The other thing is I want to just let you all know that talking about sex, talking about bodies and consent can be triggering. Not all of us have had safe, consensual, comfortable, or positive experiences with these topics. And so please do what you need to do to take care of yourself as we talk about these things. Whether you need to, sit out. Sometimes I may ask some questions. Feel free to participate as you desire, feel comfortable. Or if you need to fidget with something, if you need to get up and walk around, or if you need to leave the space. Again, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. So let's get grounded, make sure we're all on the same page about sexual health. You hear a lot about the word sex, right, in our culture, but a lot less about sexual health. So the World Health Organization defines sexual health as a state of physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being in relation to sexuality. It's not merely the absence of disease or dysfunction or infirmity, and it requires a positive and respectful approach to sexuality and sexual relationships. And it includes the possibility of having pleasurable and sexual experiences that are free of coercion and discrimination. So that's that consent piece, all right? So I just think this is important that we're all on the same page. We're talking about sexual health and wellness in relation to our young people. So, little reflective moment as you feel comfortable. I always, whenever I work with parents, it's important that we assess our own sexual health journeys before we can be of influence or mentors to others. And so, how did you first learn about sex? Take a moment, think about it, reflect. It's a little different for all of us, maybe, and if you've been in the United States for a little while, I can only imagine, right, what that's been like. Well, so I work with thousands of parents. I have a fun social media presence, so I'm actually working with parents from across the globe in some of my online programs that I have, and the experiences are just vastly different, even just from city to city when it comes to how did you first learn about sex? What were your early experiences around sex? So some of the common experiences that people share with me are in terms of classrooms, right? So they learned about sex from a class in school. And does anyone recognize these photos? Either from school or personal experiences? You don't have to raise your hand. So these are the types of photos that a lot of folks who took sex ed in class and in school were shown, right? So sex ed in class, people remember that they were shown STIs. Or symptoms of STIs, does anyone know what's the most common symptom of a sexually transmitted infection across all the infections? No symptoms at all. Whoever said that in this vicinity. Yes, that's right. No symptoms at all. So if you're looking for a penis that has an outbreak on it to know if someone has herpes or if it's a chancre with syphilis, you're probably not going to find it because they're probably not going to want to have sex with you if they're having an outbreak, right? So that's the misconception, that we're taught in a fear-based version of sex ed, which many of us may have received. There's also stories of the gum chewing. Does anybody have that in their experience? Chew a piece of gum, spit it out, pass it around. It's supposed to symbolize, don't have sex, you're going to be dirty, whatever. So yeah, there are all kinds of fear-based tactics that are used in school. So that's often a lot of the early messages that young people get. Another common one is porn, right? No, woo! For porn? Oh, come on. So just so you know, in the realm of sex positivity, porn is not the devil. Porn is not the enemy, right? So there are beautiful and ethical porn out there, and our children need to know. For media literacy, they need to understand the potential images that they may see out there. So trying to keep porn a secret or trying to paint it to be like, again, the problem is not an accurate way to go. It's not really preparing them for healthy sex lives. Plus, how many of us have watched and enjoyed porn, either individually or collectively? Probably a lot of us, right? Porn can be a good time. But what's the problem with porn? Porn is, and I put HBO here because, again, I look young, but I'll be 38 in a couple months. And so raise your hand if you remember Real Sex on HBO. Yeah, right? Anyone else sneaking around that? So that was sex ed for some people, myself included, because I grew up in a Catholic household and we didn't talk about sex. Sex was a dirty word. And so but I was very curious, as young people are. Trust me, I teach them. They're very curious. They have amazing questions. We need to talk to them. And so Skinamax was also an option for folks, right? And so this is but today, porn, sexting, these things are available at the fingertips of our young people, very, very young too. If you give them a device, chances are they're gonna come across some explicit content, or they have a friend on the bus who's looking at it, right? Or in class, it's openly shown. So we need to talk to them about these things. But again, porn is entertainment. It's not sex education. And then there's this whole purity culture thing. Some people's early messages had some faith-based, lean to it. And not all faiths, are doing this, but there are a lot of faiths out there. You got purity rings, you got contracts with, the Lord Jesus Christ and your parents, and that you're not going to have sex. You're never going to have sex until you get married. But how problematic is that, right? And especially for our friends in the LGBTQ plus IA plus community, right? Marriage is not the standard. It's not the experience for everyone for many different reasons. So it's a very shame-based way of approaching sexual health. And it often can leave a lot of young people without the tools, even once they get into marriage, and let's say they waited and they didn't touch anyone or themselves or anything, and then they get into a relationship and they don't know what the hell to do they don't know where their clitoris is, they don't know what's happening, right? And so we're not preparing them for healthy and satisfying sex lives. So we're doing them a disservice. And then another common experience that we have to acknowledge is trauma, right? So sexual trauma in childhood is very common. And it can, if unaddressed, which many times it can go unaddressed because it's a taboo, it's stigmatized. And so then it can leave folks with mental health, substance use, body image, shame, difficulty managing relationships. So again, these are sometimes, though, the early experiences that folks have with their bodies, with other people's bodies, and with sex. And then no talks at all. That's another common experience. So literally no one took the time out to talk to them about sex or their bodies or consent or anything. So as you look at this list, there we go. I'm a little slow, sorry. So as you look at this list, how many of you all can relate to any of these 5 examples as far as your early messages about sexual health? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. I'm sorry. We can do better, right? We have the opportunity to do better with the young people in our lives. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, okay? I'm going to give you 6 tips for tackling the talks. And these are not stock photos. These are me and my children. So to the left here, we have Tyson. It's my now 8-year-old. This was when he was 7, and we were reading the great book, It's Not the Stork, which Austin Public Library has over there. Has anyone read that? with a child or on your own, free reading. It's not the story. It's a wonderful book, and it's targeted for as early as 4 years old, but it takes them through, reproduction, their bodies, masturbation, a little moment on that. So it gives them a good overview. And so books are an excellent tool, so I'm so excited that the library's here. And then to the right is Aubrey. That's my daughter that's 19. So you can't really see it in there, but she's holding an FC2. Does anyone know what an FC2 is? It's not an airplane. What's that? Yeah. It's the female condom or the internal condom. And so I teach my children about contraception, and especially my girl-identified child. I need her to know that, look, you don't need to wait for a boy because she's heterosexual as far as she's identifying, and you don't have to wait for the boy to have a condom. You can come with your own stuff, and it can be fitted, right? So we got to equip them with the tools, right? And she looks so thrilled. So, all right, tip number 1 here is feeling uncomfortable, awkward, or unprepared is totally normal, all right? So have some self-compassion as you go through this process with a young person in your life. All the stuff that we just talked about, a lot of us didn't have it modeled for us, right? We didn't get to see what healthy sex conversations, the talks, the birds and the bees and all that looked like when we were younger. So how are we supposed to figure that out when it's our turn to mentor a child? So have some compassion for yourself and know that just being present and just creating that safe space is absolutely enough. And you can absolutely acknowledge out loud to your young person that you might be a little bit uncomfortable. It's totally okay. You might be on the same page and you can bond in that discomfort. One way that can help, though, to assuage the awkwardness is starting early, okay? So yes, as early as infancy, you can begin to lay the foundation for sexual health talks. And what that can look like is talking through care, talking through their bodies, using correct anatomical terms, okay? So vulva, vagina, those are 2 different things, right? Do we know about that? It's kind of the thing right now people are talking about. So the difference between the vulva and the vagina, the vulva is the external organ, right? So it's like the mons pubis, it's the lips. And then we have the internal, which is the vagina. It's going to be that birth canal. And so we want to make sure that we use the proper terms, and especially as we're cleaning and caring for vulvas, we want to make sure they know that yes, you can clean your vulva, right? But we're not going to go in the vagina and start like cleaning it and washing it and doing all that fun stuff, okay? No douching. Don't you douche, okay? Stay away from the douche, okay? No shame to any douches that might actually be in the audience. But I'm not pointing any finger, I'm just saying, we want to teach them about consent, right? We want to teach them that their body is theirs and the no means no, but we also want to teach them that yes means yes, and how can they use their voice and assert their authority, and where's the best place for them to practice this? In their home. Because if they can say no to you as the adult, then they will be empowered to say no to folks that they barely know, right? And we also want to send some early gender messages, right? So this is a fun graphic. So how can you tell if a toy is for boys or for girls? Okay, if you use it for your genital, no, it's not for children, okay? Get it out of the space, put it back in your drawer. And otherwise, it's for everyone, right? So colors are for everyone, toys are for everyone, but it's so hard in our culture because like you walk into the store, right? And you've got the boys section and you've got the girls section and there's nobody else. There are no other identities. And if you're a boy, then you're gonna go over here and play with these toys. And if you're a girl, we have the power to change that. We can shift that messaging and do some things a little bit differently, right? In our own homes and help them and socialize them to see people as people and to help them play and explore and not be limited by these social constructs, right? And so these are some things that can start early before it's even about sex, right? So instead of one talk, we want to do micro lessons, okay? This is the thing. So don't just wait until they're 16 and say, all right, now that you're 16. No, because we're very late at that point, super, super late. Definitely even the tweens, you're late, but it's okay because you can always start the talks. So micro lessons, I'll give you an example. So with my 8-year-old, when he was 6 years old, we went to Walgreens because I needed to buy some tampons, all right, because I have periods. And so and some people might think, oh gosh, I need to either send someone else or, do this without my children, or we're going to do like a covert kind of go play with the toys and I'm going to go get this and then I'll go check it out. No. These are teachable moments, right? So he was with me in the aisle, and he asked me. I saw on his face. He was, all over. So I was just waiting. Wait. When they're young, you can wait because they're curious and they'll bring it to you. And if they ask you questions, that's feedback. That lets you know that you're creating a wonderfully safe environment for them to be curious. So appreciate that. You don't always have to know the answer right away. You can look it up and get back to them. So you absolutely can. So he asked me. He was like, "What is that?" And I said, "These are tampons. Period." Keep it simple, okay? Just keep it simple. Follow their questions and their curiosities at this age. You don't have to do the whole story of, menstruation and all that stuff, unless they ask. But so I said, these are tampons. And he was like, "What are tampons for?" And so I said, again, very simply, I said, "Well, I have what's called periods each month. I bleed if I'm not having a baby. And tampons are what I stick in my vagina so that it captures the blood and it doesn't get on my underwear." And he was like, "Oh, so you're not having a baby this month?" I said, "Nope, I'm not." And he said, "Okay." And that was it. So follow their questions, okay? And what that does, though, is that laid the foundation. And so now he's 8, and we read lots of sex-positive books. And so he's getting more and more information, and his brain's working. And so he's learning more. And so guess what? I mean, he asks just a ton of questions all the time. He's so curious. And it's not awkward at all. We can talk about so many things. And so when you keep doing this over time, when they're 16, and then you're talking about like actual sex, it's not going to be awkward because this is just what we talk about in this family, right? Stay curious, right? So, wait, no, not like that. No. We're not investigators. We're parents, we're mentors, right? We're supports. So we want to create a safe space for them to be curious. And the best way for that is for us to listen. We don't need to have whole speeches and spiels, prepared. Just being available and just listening. So Aubrey, like I introduced you, she talks a lot. And so I listen a lot. And then I ask questions. I'll say, "Oh yeah, how did you feel about that?" Or "How did that make you feel?" Or "Tell me more about that." And then she just goes, right? Don't ask me all the time what it is that she just said, because sometimes I'm like doing the groceries in my head or whatever. But, but you can ask questions, open-ended questions or statements that get them talking, because then you also learn things, right? You learn things about their world, about their curiosities, and you can use this information as you need it, again, for safety purposes, right? And to just get an understanding of how they're internalizing a lot of the messages that are happening around them. And the other piece I want to say on staying curious is you yourself staying curious and staying attuned to the information that's out there. So the website that I have for sex-positive families is sexpositivefamilies.com. I maintain a list of over 100 sex-positive reads for all ages. So you don't have to know all this stuff. I don't even know all this stuff, and this is stuff that I teach, right? It's just too much. And so it's great to have books available to you And again, glad that the library's here because they're a great resource for that. Videos, there are a lot of great videos. I have links to them on my website. So use the resources that are around you. Don't feel the pressure to have to know everything. So that's what this is, right? So you don't have to know everything. Really, your kids are not looking for you to be an encyclopedia. They just want to know that they have a safe space to come to that's non-judgmental, that's shame-free, and that's going to be supportive as they move through and navigate their world. Risk-taking is a part of living, and it's certainly a part of exploring youth, right? So we also have to step back so they can step up, and we have to give them the opportunity to take healthy risks, but they have a landing space that's safe, and that's what we can create, right? So that they have a place to come to if they have any questions or curiosities or something hasn't gone so well, right? So the last thing is children want to hear it from you, okay? And so this is just some data for the nerds in the audience. So for from the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy, so as you can see, it was about 3,038 teens that were surveyed. And of them, ages 12 to 15, when they were asked who most influences your decisions, your sexual decision making, they said parents, 52%. Friends were at 17, and the media, and then there's just a bunch of them that has no clue, but that, you know. and then teens, the older teens, same thing, parents, right? But interestingly, around the same sample size of parents who were surveyed and asked the same question, only 11% of them said that parents were the primary influencers in sexual decision-making. 60% of them said that it was their friends. So what does that tell us? We are grossly underestimating our influence. Our children want to hear from us. So studies show that teens who regularly talk about sex with a parent or caring adult in their life are more likely to delay sex, have fewer sexual partners, and use contraception when they do have sex. Okay? And again, this isn't to say that the goal is, again, to keep our children away from sex. When they do have sex, when they do make those choices, you want it to be an informed choice, and you want them to have the tools to be able to protect their bodies and the bodies of their partners, right? Because we want them to be critically thinking about these things. And so these are some features of some sex-positive parents. Again, these would be the things that you want to shoot for. So you want to create a safe space. You want to listen. You want to respect their autonomy. We are not raising robots. We are raising human beings, right, that have their right to self-determination. And so we're just here to give them the tools. We don't own them. They're not property. We want to make sure that we stay connected to resources so that, again, we can be a greater resource for them and that we stay abreast. We want to make sure we use correct anatomical terms for bodies, right? And we want to talk about all bodies. And if you are a dad-identified person and you have a girl-identified child, or vice versa, right? You can absolutely talk with them about their bodies and about sex and about relationships. It's not based on gender. You grew up, you went through experiences, you can use those to help educate, inform, and connect. And then what you don't know, you can look up, right? But being there and being available is what it's all about. And we want to make sure that we challenge gender stereotypes and gender messaging, and that we are aware, again, our children's sexuality, their gender identity is not for us to direct. It's not for us to choose. It's not a choice like that. So we want to make sure that we incorporate diversity into their lives and into our discussions, and that we're not just from this heteronormative lens, because we know that the suicide rates are high for LGBTQ youth, and mental health, substance use, and a big factor in that is the support that they may or may not have in their home base. So it's up to us. So here are some resources that I want to leave you all with. Feel free if you want to take pictures of them, or again, my website has all of this and more. These are not all the resources. Our world today makes it so easy to be a sex-positive parent. So scarletine, sex, etc. These are great, great, great. So like if the choice is either you're going to watch porn and get educated, or if you're already online, then why don't you hop on over and get a teen-friendly resource to learn about your bodies, learn about masturbation, learn about all these wonderful things that you can do. And for LGBTQ youth, great resources with the Trevor Project. They have a wonderful monitored chat section and crisis services. Out Youth is local, collage.org. That's a wonderful organization for youth that have LGBTQ plus parents. And so it's a great support network. Respectability.org. So when we talk about diversity and inclusivity, this website has some great sex ed resources for folks of varied abilities, intellectual disabilities or developmental. And again, we need to have the talks with all children, in all languages and in all the ways in which they communicate verbally and non-verbally. So I want to leave you with this. So sex-positive parenting better ensures that a young person has a supportive, safe space to refer to as they navigate their way to a healthy self-image, sex life, and relationships. We want to raise children who have amazing sex, if they choose to have sex, with partners who respect them and who they respect. And the best way to do that is start early and talk often. That's all I got for you.
So the way this will work, after the roaring applause I was doing, is we'll just pass that mic. Okay. All right. So I checked the Twitters, and I didn't get any Twitter questions that I saw. Did I miss anything? Someone tweeted us and we missed it? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and take questions from the crowd. Raise your hands and keep in mind that it is hard to see because these lights are crazy. I see one here. Awesome. So to repeat the question, just to make sure everybody could hear it, the questioner is a teacher at a school for the blind, and this person will be teaching sex education classes for the first time coming up soon, which is pretty cool. And she wanted to know if there are, there's a possibility of angry parents reacting to this class being offered at their school because, quote unquote, their child is disabled and they don't need to know about that stuff. So, what are your thoughts?
That's a great question, and I just also want to commend you, because again, teaching sex ed, talking about sex for a living, it's not easy. We have a lot of resistance, and especially with the Trump administration and the changes that are happening. So I commend you there. We can never have enough sex educators. So one thing that I recommend, because yes, this can run up to a lot of people's values. A lot of folks come from different backgrounds that they may not even openly share, that create resistance to these topics. And then you have the extra layer of assumptions associated with ability, right? And so one thing that I recommend if you aren't doing this already, is have a parent meeting. Like, have an opportunity for the parents, at least invite them to learn more about the curriculum that you're going to be teaching. That way they can ask questions that they may have. Make sure that any materials that you do send home with them have a lot of information to them. It's not just like this, like sign, the sheet that's really generic. Also, make sure that if you're able to give them actual handouts or materials as you move through the information, I always recommend that's a good resource so that you can reassure them that they can stay plugged into the process. But we also want to be advocates for our young people, right? Because we're charged with not causing them harm ultimately as educators. And so helping that parent to understand first that you get it, right? That it's challenging to have these conversations and to leave these conversations at the hands of others that they may not know what they're going to share and say. But it's so important for their safety. If you bring things back to safety and to their health versus the sex part that can be intimidating to people, then that many times can help people see that, look, we're on the same page. We want the same thing for your child. And regardless of their ability, we want them to live fulfilled lives. We hope that one day they may connect with others in loving ways, and we want them to have the tools to stay safe in that. So listening to them so that they have the space to, and you're clear about what their issue truly is, and we're not making assumptions. And then, offering them, again, what are those highlights and how can they get involved and stay plugged in, and that you're not trying to shut them out. And thank you for what you do.
Okay, that was such a spectacular answer. I feel like we were almost done. I think that we're probably good on questions for right now, but I do want to emphasize that there's a lot of really good information. And are you open to people following up with you if they have questions? Yes. Outstanding. All right. Say it in the microphone.
We're in this together.
All right, thank you so much.